So thank you all for being here for Sarah's farewell service. A very good turnout. No one's surprised at that. I'm supposed to do the boring housekeeping stuff. If you want to escape, go that way. And there's some bathrooms in the foyer. Also in the foyer is a collection box if anyone wants to give contributions to the hospice that these guys have chosen. And if you have cards or anything like that you want to leave, just leave them beside the collection box outside in the lobby. Okay? Can people hear me at the back? Excellent. Two thumbs up there from the back. Yeah, it's just a good question. Anyway, thank you. That's good. We're yeah. And thank you, Ozzy. I mean, I'm supposed to be helping him, but he's helping me. And anyone who hasn't been smart enough to put their phone to silent or vibrate, probably silent, now is not a bad time to do it. You don't want to be that person. Okay. So the first thing we're going to have is a violin piece. It's Anissa Arslanic, so my apologies. And it's Vaughan Williams, the Lark Ascending. can see why Sarah loves it so much. So just to note that John and Jane Rawlinson are joining us by high technology direct feed. Nice to be able to get the opportunity to be here. And also there's a eulogy which is written by John, which should now be read by Julian.
I'm the one who doesn't need the box.
Yeah, you don't need the box.
Hi, I'm Sarah's brother Julian, and I've come to say a few words of my own about what Sarah meant to me, and also say something on Mum and Dad's behalf. Having a child die must be the worst thing that could happen to a parent, and not being able to be at her funeral just adds to that pain. Mum isn't well enough to make the journey, and despite being desperate to do so. When I asked Dad whether he was going to come, he said he wanted to, but he said, we said hello to Sarah together, and we're going to say goodbye to her together, which is a beautiful way of looking at it. I think all day long we're going to hear what an amazing person Sarah was. She was a star pupil and student, and she rose to be an outstanding doctor and consultant. And when she'd done with that, she went on to become a brilliant poet and writer, having a book accepted into the National Poetry Archive. She was funny, clever. A night watching University Challenge with her was utterly demoralising for her. And she was always extremely positive. Me and her were still playing an online crossword game until the day before she died. And even though she was slipping away, annoyingly, she almost always won. She loved fun, and her laugh was one of the best sounds you could hear. A proper snorting laugh could go on for ages. And when you thought, please stop for the 10th time, she would erupt again. We often couldn't remember why we'd started laughing in the first place. She was also an amazing auntie to my kids, always keen to know what they were up to, taking them on day trips, and always there to have a laugh and gently make jokes with them. To me, though, she was my big sister, and she always called me her baby brother. We'd look out for each other, and we always knew we were there for one another. We'd always turn to each other in tough times. We'd fall out. She told me I was able to wind her up more than anyone else in the world. But we always made up. Generally with me admitting I was wrong, and she always forgiving us. She's left us a million positive memories. She's helped patients recover and get on with their lives, and she's brought joy and happiness to all of us just by being her. She's left us with two amazing children who will continue to live as she did, thoughtfully, intelligently, and with the confidence to do whatever they want to achieve. She's left Ozzy, the love of her life, who will continue to guide and help them, though now terribly without the love of his life. She'll live on through them, and she will live on through her wonderful poetry, which we're going to hear today. And she will be in our hearts and minds forever. Watching her die over 17 years in what felt like death by 1,000 cuts was awful for all of us who knew her. Each time she went for a different treatment, we naively thought this might be the one. We had hoped that the raft was getting away from the rocks, only for it to be brought crashing back in by a cruel tide, and she'd have to start the journey again. It's truly not been fair. But sometimes life's not fair. Dad and I were given the chance to say goodbye to her face to face at the hospice. I made her laugh by telling her she'd had more last Christmases than George Michael. But as we wept around her, she calmly told us she loved us, and we could tell she wasn't scared by what was about to happen. She was a truly special person, and special people don't come along very often. And we need to remember that we were all lucky to have her in our lives. Last year, Sarah asked my dad if he would write a eulogy for her. It was a tough thing to ask and a heartbreaking thing for Dad to write. But he did it, and that's what I'm going to deliver now. So he sent her an email and started with this. Sarah, this is my attempt. I have restricted myself to your early years because others will cover your life after you left home far better than I could. If you don't like it, tell me and I'll have another go. She obviously liked it. I can't do his voice, so you'll have to live with mine. We quickly realised that Sarah was something very special. For example, when she was less than a year old, our friend Noel was babysitting while Jane was at work. And he was amazed when the time came to change her nappy that she showed him how to do it. Patience wasn't always one of her virtues. Sarah was always ahead of the game, both physically and mentally. Her mind was always active, forever thinking of things to do or make. It must have been quite exhausting to have been a friend. She always had a sense of curiosity and adventure. Twice lost in Barnsley. Fate worse than death, that. Stuck up trees, striding across the moors nearby. Any challenge was there to overcome. She was fearless. Time was precious. Things had to be done. Routine was boring. Sitting with your hands still was a complete waste of time. We tried when she was about 8, giving her an ultimatum about keeping her room tidy. In high dudgeon, she went off, and a little while later she reappeared, announcing that the job was done. The bedroom did look a bit tidier, but on close inspection, everything had just been pushed under the bed. We gave up trying. Sorry, Ozzy, we should have tried more. Her great love was reading. Books were essential, although anything in print would suffice. With a book, she would completely lose herself and become oblivious to the rest of the world. Something that persisted throughout the rest of her life. She asked to stay with Auntie Winnie, who had a shop in Stoke. More important was that Winnie's friend was the manager of the largest bookshop in the Potteries. Sarah would be deposited by Winnie in the children's section in the morning and would just stay there for the rest of the day, reading anything and everything and declaring it to have been the best holiday ever. When she was nearly 3, we moved to Barnsley. Jane got a teaching job and Sarah got a morning place at nursery. When Jane went to collect her at lunchtime, there was a vocal and physical resistance to leaving. So much so that the head said the best thing to do would be for Sarah to go full-time. Peace was restored. When she came home that night, she quizzed her about the day and her lunch, and she declared she'd had bananas and custard. Sorry, custard. She was still able and loved miming people's accents, and her Yorkshire dialect was always good for a laugh. In May 1975, we heard that Wakefield Girls High School were running a late entry exam. And seeing as how bored she had become in primary school, we decided to let her have a go, even though she was a year underage. She passed. But as the head told us, it was on the amazing maturity shown in her English paper and the interview that got her in. Maths would come with time, which indeed it did. She loved her time at Wakefield, in spite of being sick on most days on the school bus. At first, she struggled with the age difference, but her outgoing attitude and ability to make friends easily overcame this. She was game for anything, including trying to play the violin. She did not have a good musical ear. And the three of us would suffer as she determinedly practiced at home, and we had to guess the title of the piece that was being brutalized. Fortunately, it had the same effect on the music teacher. And after one public performance, the violin was dropped forever. It was replaced by drama, something she both excelled in and loved. The drama budget guides required a 5-minute playlet. Not good enough for Sarah. She had to write, perform, stage manage, prompt, and cajole 2 friends into performing in a play which lasted 40 minutes. At 16, she decided she wanted to study medicine and applied to the Middlesex Medical School. After her interview, she was offered a place, providing she got 2 E's at A-level, but she would have to wait a year until she was 18. So in the year at home, she chose to do a secretarial course. Good advice. You'll always need shorthand and typing. Much to her embarrassment, and probably the rest of the class's annoyance, she won all the year-end prizes. With these skills, she became secretary for Sheffield Eagles Rugby League Club, even modelling the kit in the local paper under the memorable headline, "Scrumptious." Yes, yes. Unfortunately, no clips of that. As you can see, we are inordinately proud of our Sarah, our beautiful, highly intelligent girl who managed to couple this with being a kind and loving person too, and who grew up to be an exceptional human being who has been cruelly taken from us. And at the end, he put a little note to Sarah. "I have hated doing this, and it has made me very sad. And knowing me as you do, you will not be surprised to hear I have shed a lot of tears. It doesn't do you justice, but at least you know how much we have loved you and how heartbroken we feel that you have ended up in this situation. Remember, above all things, we will always love you." Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julian. That was excellent. So one of the things that we're going to do here is if you go to your second last page of your ordered service, you will discover there's the lyrics of 2 songs. The reason why those lyrics are in there, we expect you to sing along. So, introduce.
The reason we're doing this is not because Sarah Finton and I are big Liverpool fans. It's not even to annoy all the Manchester United and everything. It's because Sarah loved Carousel. It was her favourite musical, and of course, You Never Walk Alone comes from that musical. So Joe's going to start us off in a slightly lower key than it's normally played, because otherwise none of us will make the top. So let's start with the edition of You Never Walk Alone.
What's going on?
Hold your head. Again,
golden sky and the sweet silver song of the lark. Or on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. Walk on, with hope in your heart, that you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone.
That was a fair effort.
Don't leave it down to Sarah.
Okay, so I am now going to read a piece of Sarah's. Which I have to find in here, I'm afraid. I'll go ahead now. Very good. A lot of the pieces that have been reviewing today were written by Sarah, who, as most of you know, is a fantastic writer. And there's also seems to be a very strong theme of larks throughout this whole presentation as well. So, okay, so this is Sarah's Skylarks. Even the name is good. I'm sure she's standing to you. No, I can't hack it.
I can do it.
I'll do it. Even the name is joyful. We heard our first ones of the year the other day on a cold, bleak February afternoon. There they were, flicking themselves at the sky. For a moment it was summer, because skylarks are summer. They are lying on the short turf above Sandymount. They are sunshine and blue skies and the sound of the sea and the soft layer underneath their singing. Our local beach is Westward Ho. We go up to the Sandymere end, away from the town. There's a links course there and dozens of skylarks. You hear them as soon as you get out of the car, but by the time you cross the Pebble Ridge, the sound of the sea is too strong. The skylarks are gone. It's always hard to spot them. They fly so high, climbing up into the blue. It's easier in the winter when they seem to stay lower. I love the music they've inspired. Vaughan Williams, of course, but also Glinka. My son plays an arrangement of Glinka's The Lark on the piano, and it's beautiful. When he plays it, I stop what I'm doing and I listen. But I love the actual song of the actual bird the most. I don't remember hearing it anywhere but here in Devon, near the sea. It's the sound of Enid Blyton days, of buckets and spades, of ice cream. It's lugging too much stuff with us. It's ginger biscuits and the flasks of coffee, and putting on a jumper because it's an English song. And it's always windier than you think it would be. It's stopping to listen and saying, oh, a skylark. And the piano, isn't it? And this is Anya Job playing Glinka the Lark. So Claire, we're asking you to come up next. Solid friend of Sarah's, and to read a message from Sarah. Are you going to come in? Cheers, Dr.
Well, this would be a day without a message from Sarah herself. We had a long time to talk about this day and what it was going to be like, and she was quite gutted that she couldn't be here. So I have the privilege to read to you the words that she wanted to say. Maybe I was the luckiest moment of all when I met Ozzy. He was truly been my soulmate. He has made me braver, stronger, happier, and more adventurous. He was there when we were having far much fun than you can imagine, and he's been there caring for me over the last few difficult years. He has been kind, patient, generous, supportive, and I could not have asked for a better husband. Thank you. And because of him, I got Sive and Vinton. Two amazing adults now. Two people I really, really love and really like. I wish I could get to see more of their stories. I'm so proud of them. I still can't quite work out how they turned out so well. But they sure did. I've had so many dreams come true. I've seen whales breaching off the coast of Costa Rica. I've seen polo matches in the Himalayas. I've had 3 books published. I've seen elephants and the Northern Lights and sunrise in the desert. And yes, all of these moments will be lost, like tears in the rain. But maybe that doesn't matter. I had them. It would be very easy to forget how great things have been. I think the last couple of years I have of my life was, but please don't remember me like that. Remember me as someone who enjoyed life as much as they could. Someone who lived well, loved well, was loved by people who matter. Remember me as someone who was lucky. When we were planning this, I suddenly felt really annoyed that I wouldn't be here with all you lovely people. I hope you have a good time, but not too much of a good time. But a good time of all. Ozzy wanted this to be a celebration of my life. I'm not sure I've done that much to deserve celebrating, but I know how lucky I've been. I started out lucky, a lovely mum and dad, an adorable baby brother, a family that nurtured me and cherished me, and that's a good way to start life. I was lucky with my work. I worked with some generally lovely people in a job I really enjoyed, and I've made a difference to at least some people's lives. I've been lucky with Julian and Massey, Johnny, Jimmy and Claire. I've been there to support my parents now that they're getting older. It's been really generous of them, and I don't know how things would have looked if they hadn't protected me of the stress of the grief, and I've been so lucky to have them. I've been lucky with friends. So many people have made an effort to show us love over the last few months, and thank you for that. And then there's my in-laws. There's a lot of them. They could have been a nightmare, but actually, they were great. All my love, Sarah.
Thanks. Also for being able to do that. Once when you could Sarah. And I disagree with one thing said there, by the way. So Sarah's saying she had a life that wasn't worthy of much.
Exactly.
I mean, for God's sake, she had twice as much life as anybody else in this room, with the possible exception of us. Drag them along. Okay, it's time to do some music again. Asina Aslagalik. Did I get it right? Ozzy, introduce the band.
And these are sounded Jane Clark.
And what are you playing and why?
I'm going to play My Lagan Love, which is a song that Sarah and I particularly love. It's an old Irish song. Jane's going to sing it.
When like a string sings a lullaby, there grows a lily fair. The twilight's gleam is in her eye. The night is on her head. And like a lovesick lamb she hath my heart enthralled. Nor life I owe, nor liberty, for love is Lord of all. And often when the beetles song has lulled the eye to sleep, I stick to her sheer and long, and through the door there on the cricket singing stone, she stirs the boardwood fire, and hums in soft, sweet undertone the song of love's
So we're going to head over to Ozzy, but just before I do, Ozzy, I had the unusual luck to be with Ozzy when he first met Sarah's parents. An unusual situation to be accidentally dropped into. Ozzy and I had been at a party or a gig or something up in Leeds. I think Andy was in some way responsible. She was definitely around. We had a pretty exhausting weekend, let's just say. Quite a few pints, a few recreational chemicals, all that kind of stuff. Ozzy was giving me a lift back to London, which was convenient because it was cheaper than the train. And Ozzy said, oh, by the way, we need to stop at Barnsley to pick up somebody from a lift to London. So I said, fine. I didn't particularly care who that was or why we were doing that. So we headed off and we talked about important stuff like music and science and all this kind of stuff. But when we literally got to the gate of Sarah's parents' house, just as we drove in, I noticed it's a very nice house. It's a late Edwardian, big double-story brick house. Looked very, the garden looked lovely. Driving onto the gravel, I said to Ozzy, who are we picking up here? Like, who the hell do you know who lives in a place like this? So Ozzy said, oh, it's Sarah, my girlfriend. I said, oh, girlfriend, interesting. So we're out of the car 2 seconds later, and Sarah meets us at the door. And of course, this is the very first time I've ever set eyes on her. I look at her and go, out of your league, Oz, as usual. Well done. She's good looking. Not only is she good looking, she's dressed in a very trendy, kind of laid back but fashionable way. Nice haircut, good looking woman. Yeah, I think she's probably a lot cooler than you was. Can't see this one last. So in we went into the house, and Sarah's parents knew that she was being collected by the new boyfriend, the doctor from London. So they were all like ready, and the tea was laid out in the living room. It was all very nice. And I was hanging along like the spare, the spare. I can't remember the term. A spare individual. So we all sat around, and the tea and the scones were passed around and stuff. And the conversation started. And looked terribly nice and friendly and polite. And then I suddenly realized that the parents were at the wrong end of the stick. Somehow they had jumped to the conclusion that the nerd in the class was actually the doctor from London. And Ozzy was like this bloke who was hanging along. The conversation got a bit weird before I worked this out. I said, I think you got that. No, I think that's right. No, I'm not. Ozzy is the doctor. Ask him doctor questions. And they went, oh. It only barely phased them. So then we continued the conversation, we finished the tea, and we stuck everything in the car. And off we went. I'm thinking to myself, I'm not really sure if this girl is Ozzy's type. I mean, I've drawn a lot of conclusions. I jumped to a lot of conclusions based on the house. There's lovely furniture, kind of mildly Scandic, a little bit classy, that kind of stuff. Very nice environment. Really nice. I'm not sure if she looked so presentable and so nice. I was thinking, I'm not really sure if this one's Ozzy's type. So we get into the car and we just head out. And we're literally 500 yards away from the house. And Ozzy slows down and says to Sarah, pint? And she says, hell yes. But, yeah, that'd be okay. And Ozzy can tell you a lot more.
Thank you, Kieran, for that. I think I might need a glass of water to try I'd like to start by reading a poem Sarah wrote called Sail. Not like a Boxing Day sale, a poem. All right. If I am the mast, you are the sail. I mean the thing that drives us on, letting wind become momentum. I thought the ocean was a barrier, but you showed me it was connection, and that the storms were energy. But then again, I've held you, tied you to all these things you love, kept you from flying off too far, losing too much. This is the power we have together to make purpose out of fear and chaos, to keep moving. It's a lovely poem about us, but it neglected to mention one thing, the rudder. Without a boat or rudder, a boat is completely directionless, at the mercy of the seas. I was 30 years old when I met Sarah, who was 7 years younger than me. I've been brought up one of 7 children in Dublin, gone to medical school, completed my house jobs in Dublin before moving to Newfoundland on a bit of a whim. I worked there for 18 months as a GP, and having had enough of the cold, harsh conditions, I returned to Ireland, but again, without really giving my life any thought, I moved to England in January 1984, completed my GP training, and was really at a loss of what to do next. So in 1988, again without any having real life plan, I started a 6-month job in anaesthesia at Chase Farm Hospital in Enfield. At the time, I was a bit of a hedonistic wild rover stereotype, and basically my life was rudderless. However, our lives are governed as much by chance events as by well-laid plans, and my life changed in an instant on Monday, September the 5th, 1988. I just finished a very tiring 80-long-hour weekend shift. With instead of being sensible and having an early night, I decided I'd have supper in the hospital, and I really wanted to go for a pint, basically. So supper in the hospital canteen, where one of the few spaces available was at a table occupied by 3 women. I asked if I could join them, and after a minute or two, decided to chance my arm and said to no one in particular, "Anyone up for a pint?" The woman to my right said, "Yes, I'll go." So completely by chance, and without knowing it at the time, I had met the love of my life, Sarah. Her positive response to a complete stranger suggested she was adventurous, curious, and trusting, and so proved. She was also highly intelligent and witty. Ever since that day, so many people have said to me that I seriously punched above my weight. There's probably some truth in that, but also maybe a little bit of envy. We met several times that week, and initially we behaved with impeccable restraint. But soon we became lovers and had a wonderful 3 months before she went off to do a 3-month medical elective in Chiang Mai in Thailand. By the time she returned to London, I had moved to another anaesthetic job, this time in Manchester, and I knew meeting her wasn't going to be easy. So for the first time since I was 15, I experienced the sort of anxiety that you experience with an adolescent crush. I wanted her to come to Ireland with me, and for 2 weeks she seemed reticent, but finally accepted, and she had her first holiday in Ireland with me in the beautiful village of Aakista on Dunmanus Bay in West Cork. We arrived during a ferocious storm lasting 3 days, all of which we spent either in bed or in the Tin Pub, which is now a favourite haunt of Raymond Norton. Finally, the weather cleared and we did some great walks, and by the end of the week we'd fallen in love with each other, and Sarah had fallen in love with Ireland. She provided me with the rudder that was missing in her poem and in my life. It's a strange thing to think now, but from the end of that week, both of us just knew that we would spend the rest of our lives together. She provided me, chaos was replaced by certainty and, more importantly, love. A month later, she celebrated her 24th birthday, and my first ever present to her was an air rifle. I think she got more pleasure out of that present than any other at that time. It was a very funny story about the police and that. 4 months later came our next adventure when we both went to Spain for the first time, to Catalonia on a walking holiday. We fell in love with Spain and started learning Spanish to add to Sarah's already excellent French. We would return again and again, and the last visit there in 2023 was spent somewhat accidentally in Cadiz. And you can speak to Jane Clark about that, why that we ended up there accidentally. But our fondest memories will always be of Granada. We'd been together 4 years when we took bicycles on a cycling holiday there at the end of October 1992. I decided it was time to propose to her. So on a chilly, dull, late autumn afternoon, we found ourselves at the Alhambra Palace, a place synonymous with passion and romance. However, every time I found a quiet courtyard and was about to pop the question, a group of Japanese tourists was here, completely lost. Instead, 2 days later, in a bar called Restaurant Bar Manolo, I proposed and she said yes. And we ended up dancing on a long trestle table with the staff and some customers until 4 in the morning. The owner provided vintage cava, and at the end of the night refused to let us pay anything for all the drinks we had. It was the second important yes in our lives. When we told my parents of our decision, you could feel their palpable sense of relief that finally someone had brought me to my senses and rescued their prodigal son, especially as it was someone as lovely as Sarah. They adored Sarah, as did all my siblings. The third and most important yes occurred in the Church of St. Mary the Virgin, Oxon Hope, West Yorkshire on June the 19th, 1993. Though not religious, we loved hearing the bells peal on a Sunday morning as we lay in bed after a heavy night at the Bay Horse Pub. So when we met the vicar to discuss the wedding, he inquired why we wanted to get married in the Church of St. Mary the Virgin, Oxon Hope, and I naively replied with complete honesty. I received a subtle but painful kick under the table from Sarah, who as usual proceeded with grace and charm to rescue the situation. The day itself was memorable for many reasons, among which were the beautiful dress Sarah wore and how beautiful she looked. In fact, that is a photograph of her on the morning of our wedding. She looked absolutely beautiful that day. The wonderful party we had that day, which had actually started 3 days before the wedding, was full of music, laughter, and love. And most importantly, and finally, the poorly executed impromptu fireworks display at 1 a.m. in the morning, which brought the police and fire brigade uninvited to our wedding. She has asked specifically that we prevent a repeat of this today. But the most memorable moment was when she said, "Yes, I will," to me. Years later, when she was having to deal with the terrible effects of cancer and its treatment, she would joke that I should have rejected the "in sickness and in health" clause. I could never have done that. And indeed, it's only in adversity that you find out the true measure of someone's character. And Sarah was a woman of absolutely immense character. The lovely thing about Sarah was that she was great at saying yes, especially to life's important questions. She wrote a poem about saying yes, which Helen Brooke will now read. Helen was Sarah's flatmate when I first met Sarah, and is a lifelong and much-loved friend to us both. It was also there that I first met her brother Julian, whom she adored, and who, in a beautiful gesture on her last birthday, brought her back for the last time on a nostalgic trip to Barnsley, where she was brought up. The people now living in the house where she and Julian were reared by her parents kindly invited her in to see the house, and I think gave her tea. It was so nice of them to do so, and it meant a lot to Sarah. Sarah was living in Brockwell, next to the Oval cricket ground, when I first met her, and from her balcony you could see the bowler or the batsman, but not the whole wicket. Probably just as well. But it was a little bit odd that on that day she went back to Barnsley. She got out of the car, and the very first person she bumped into was the famous cricketing umpire and most famous son of Barnsley, Dickie Bird. And she had a lovely photo taken with Dickie Bird. So now I'm going to turn to Helen, wherever you are. And Helen is going to read what Sarah's called The Day of Saying Yes. Following that, you will hear Jane Clark sing the aria Intratina from Orff's Carmina Burana, accompanied again by Joe and Anna. It's a lovely piece that was played out already. By the way, I'll be back.
So this is entirely on me. This is my job, and I am not doing it properly.
The day of saying yes. All day I was determined to say yes, to be a woman who said yes to things. Yes to life in all its glory, all its mess. Yes to those shoes, that yellow dress. Yes carried me that day like wings. And I said yes to coffee, wanting to chase dreams, but taking coffee anyway. And then said yes to sandwiches in the canteen. And yes to working late, to being keen. And yes to dinner, eating with a friend. And I said yes to you when you came near and met my eyes across the plates of chips, offered a pub and a pint of beer. I said yes then to laughing without fear, to one more pint, to sitting, talking late. And I said yes, not knowing quite what I was saying yes to. Trains and temples, glaciers and nights of shooting stars and coloured lights and juddering bus rides, endless games of cards, and talking everywhere, and planting trees, and growing kids, and now still throwing words into the air and catching them. I said yes to you there, not knowing where I'd go. I said yes, yes, yes.
Oh, yes. I would have to. You're ahead of yourself. 5 months after our wedding, we went to New Zealand via the Cook Islands, where we both learned to scuba dive, which opened up an underwater world of wonder. We worked together in the same job as registrars in psychiatry at Waikato Hospital in Hamilton. I'd only previously done 6 months of psychiatry, whereas Sarah had done several years and was much more experienced than I was. She was an absolute joy to work with, and she taught me so much in the year that we worked together. Like everything else, she was incredibly good at her job and was loved by staff and patients alike. She was a great listener, was kind, compassionate, non-judgmental, and a great advocate for her patients. We also met and made some wonderful friends in New Zealand, some of whom have brought the pasties for the after-service buffet. Thanks, Dean and Claire, for everything. After the service, her colleagues at North Devon will expand on her qualities as a psychiatrist. After we've had the meal, they won't have to say a little thing about what it was like working with her. But work was only a means to adventure, and over the next 4 years, we travelled to New Zealand, Australia, Fiji, and from Sri Lanka to the village of Uchayaz in Western Turkey, where we had spent our honeymoon 2 years earlier. We reached there via India, Pakistan, and Iran. We both shared a fascination for other cultures, languages, architecture, art, literature, and history, and had wonderful experiences with so many strangers. It affirmed our faith in the goodness of people and humanity in general. We walked the rims of active volcanoes, across glaciers in Pakistan, and watched polo played with all its original rawness and skillful horsemanship in Gilgit and Chitral. It was a far cry from Jilly Cooper's Riders or Rivals, something which she also loved. We saw the early morning mist rise off the Jumna River and shroud the beautiful dome of the Taj Mahal, lending it an ethereal heavenly quality. We travelled to Persepolis, Ephesus, and saw the exquisite blue tile domes of Esfahan. We lay in the centre of Australia under the most amazing canopy of stars, made even more impressive by being there during a transit of Halley's Comet. Sarah had an intense curiosity about the world and the universe, the how, the why, the what, and the where of life. She has wonderful parents, John and Jane, to thank for this. They were both teachers, but probably the greatest gift they gave to Sarah was to teach her how to learn for herself. She was born in St Austell, but moved to Yorkshire when she was 2. From an early age, she read voraciously and continued doing so throughout her life. She would read 3 or 4 books a week, at least 3 or 4 books a week, and would sometimes cook or hoover with her nose in a book. She wasn't fussy either. She read children's classics, modern novels, sci-fi, classical literature, poetry, cheap romantic novels, novels about science, nature, history, architecture, art, you name it, she read it. She was a living library, and I learned something new from her every day of my life. She also loved films, and her favourite film was Blade Runner. However, one film that we never saw was The Terminator. I only mention this because, by a strange quirk of fate, the day she married me, she became Sarah Connor, the namesake of the heroine of The Terminator. So wherever we travelled, people, mainly middle-aged men, I have to say, found great amusement in me meeting their imagined film heroine, often parting with the words, "I'll be back." In the last few months, with typical black humour, she joked that the Terminator would soon be terminated, much like the replicant Roy Batty at the end of her favourite film, Blade Runner. In the famous speech before he dies, he talks about the wondrous things he has seen. Sarah knew how he felt and wrote a little piece about it, which our best man, Andy Castles-Brown, will now read.
Thank you for that introduction, Ozzy. And I think we've all already witnessed today how amazing Sarah is and Ozzy in so many different ways. So you can imagine when Ozzy started to describe what he wanted to have to manifest his love for Sarah at this ceremony and started describing all the musicians, the poets, the singers, I was somewhat nervous, to say the least, as to what he might line up to me. And I was hugely relieved when he lined up something along the sci-fi movie of Blade Runner and Terminator, which was kind of much more my level of intellect and reproducibility. So this is Roy Batty, C'est moi, by Sarah. There were origami cranes on the wall in the pub, and that set us thinking of Blade Runner, obviously. Blade Runner is one of my favourite films. I love the idea that the future will be scruffy in places. He got the weather bang on. It has Harrison Ford and Rutger Hauer. It's a film I'll stay up late to watch if it's on the TV. And there aren't many things that keep me up past bedtime these days. Certainly not on the telly. I first watched it back when I was smug in the knowledge of my own eternal youth and immortality. Now I watch it in the knowledge that I'm hurtling towards oblivion. Roy Batty is dying, and he knows it, and he's angry. Well, so am I. I suspect I'm not the only one. And Roy, I have seen amazing things too. I've seen an eclipse of the sun. I've seen a red moon. I've seen my husband waiting for me at the altar. I've held my newborn daughter. I've seen a snowstorm, a cloud, a deer leaping. I've watched my son run and jump and skip with pure joy. All these things would be lost, like tears in the rain. I'd just like to add that I think these things are far from lost. Ozzy and Sarah have launched 2 amazing stars into the galaxy. Supernovas.
More water. Sarah was not just a prolific reader and lover of all the arts, but she was a wizard with words. Words that were always chosen wisely and carefully. She was great at quizzes, as the people of Langtree know. She was amazing at Scrabble and completely unbeatable at Boggle. She won the Guardian Prize, cryptic crossword twice, did Wordle every morning until a few days before death. Sarah was never without a pen and notebook, and thanks to her collaboration with poets all around the world, she became a wonderful poet. In the last few years of her life, she had 3 books of her poetry published, and 4 weeks before she died, one of them was accepted into the National Poetry Archive of Britain. The tributes from her many poetry friends around the world beautifully expressed an appreciation of her talent. But her talents were not limited to being a wordsmith. She could draw, she could paint, she could make mosaics, she could do pottery, she could do origami, she could sew, embroider, crochet, and knit the most amazingly complex pattern jumpers. In fact, she was great at everything she turned her hand to. She was a good dancer, but though she loved music, sadly she could never sing in tune. She was also phenomenally on time. In his Father of the Bride speech, John famously said that Sarah had a place for everything, and that place was the floor. We arrived back in England in 1997. Sarah was pregnant at the time, but sadly miscarried, and it took another 4 years before she was pregnant again, but it was worth the wait. Cy weighed in at over 11 pounds in 2001, and Fintan followed in 2003. We moved to Devon in 2005 to be near her parents in Torrington, but while we were still flush with the joy of 2 lovely children, our lives were cruelly turned upside down on the 17th of December 2007, 2 days before Fintan's 4th birthday. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, which had already spread and was incurable. I can never erase the memories of the cruelties that this disease and its treatments inflicted upon her, but she bore it all with truly heroic courage, fortitude, dignity, and humour. She also wrote a blog for other breast cancer sufferers called Fantastic Metastatic Me, which gave comfort, advice, and more than a few laughs to others. At the outset, Sarah was told that she would be unlikely to see Simon Fintan finish primary school, but with typical strength of character, the skill and care of so many doctors, nurses, physios, OTs, and an semblance of the medical people, and her other large slice of well-deserved love, she defied that expectation. She took this desire to see her children reared to heart, and her love of life and of them kept her going up on Fintan's 21st birthday, 8 days before her death. That day that we celebrated Fintan's 21st birthday in the hospital, she was moved in her bed from her room to the lounge for the party we'd arranged. And of course, this involved switching her oxygen supply from the mains oxygen supply to portable oxygen and back again. In the lounge, the nurses had difficulty reconnecting to the mains oxygen supply. And after 30 seconds, Sarah let out a gasp and collapsed back in her bed. As soon as she saw the look of panic on the nurses' faces, she immediately sat up again and laughed. It was quite a naughty joke. Can I also say that Simon and Fintan, who have lived under the cloud of Sarah's illness since childhood, were a wonderful support and comfort to her over the years. She would have done anything for them, and they for her. She was a wonderful mother to them. She was so proud of the lovely people they've become. Like her, they are talented, thoughtful, adventurous, dependable, and wise. In spite of the cloud which hung over her lives, she approached living in Devon with the same breathtaking enthusiasm that she approached everything else. She worked as a consultant child and adolescent psychiatrist and made many friends through her work. She became a governor at Monkley School and befriended many of the parents there, particularly the Mathers, Griggs, and Gierkes. But most of all, she loved the landscape, the beaches, and the sea. She was very observant, as can be seen from the poem Devon Ash at the start of the order of service. You won't be surprised to hear that she knew rather a lot about the fauna and flora of Britain, and particularly Devon. And it was a joy to hear her tell stories and facts about wildflowers, trees, and animals on each of our walks. She loved being in the sea, and for 8 years she swam monthly in the sea without a wetsuit, and was grateful when I finally bought her a dry robe. She described all this in a poem that Cy will now read called Names on a Map.
That's right. It's because he's not following the script. Yeah, thank you.
This is our coastline. We have mapped it, claimed it with feet and eyes and breath. Scanned where we saw the sparrowhawk. The place where the cormorants hang their black wings up to dry. The rounded cobbles marked with barnacles, and sandy mere, where I'd seen fish thrown up and dancing in the cresting waves, and Westward Ho, all fish and chips and ice cream cones, and various and serious rock pools, Abbotsham and Papacoon, Bucksmills, deep valleys running to the sea. He's whispering it in my ear. Steep wooded walls and bluebells and a badger once. Ferry Cross and Black Church Rock and Hartland Quay, where the sun drops heavily behind the sloping rock and the cliffs are all carved back, stripped to the deep past. Shipwood Bay is seals and sandwiches, then Welcome Mouth, Gull Rock and Crackington and Sandy Mouth, pebbles and sandy feet and salt cake skin. Herring gulls and peregrines, the day the swallows came. The sea claws at the land here. Seal grey, scouring at angles, carving. We have left our laughter here, our voices, calling. We've left our fading photographs and sun-bleached stories to be washed clean and worn away.
One of the inconveniences of living with a terminal illness is the uncertainty involved in planning holidays. Because of this, many of our holidays consisted of last-minute ferries to Ireland or across the Channel to Europe, where we would go camping or stay with friends. This way we didn't have to worry about last-minute cancellations. We holidayed in Ireland, Britain, Denmark, Belgium, the Netherlands, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Austria, Switzerland and Croatia. For many, that amount of driving, especially if driven by me, will be a nightmare. But some of our best times were had on those journeys where we had great fun and had a lot of time to play lots of games and music in the car. As time went by, Italy became her favourite destination, and Boda started learning Italian, and she was still doing Duolingo Italian until a few days before she died, even though she knew she was never going to see Italy again. Siobhan McMahon, who was the bridesmaid at her wedding, will now read a poem simply called "My Car."
Car. This car is full of ghosts, echoes of us, trailing muddy boots, wet swimming costumes, snatched coffees. Oh, we've lived here, spilt water, secrets, fizzy drinks, shouted at the radio, at the sat-nav, at each other, told our stories of successes and betrayals. We've slept here, heads lolling on the long road north. We'll clean it out before we sell it, gather up old receipts for faded clothes, stray Lego bricks and crumbs and seashells that we gathered and forgot about. Perhaps the future owner will still feel us there, a waft of wood smoke or of chlorine or ice cream's vanilla kiss, perhaps a giggle or a grumble from the back, or perhaps the radio will play an old Ed Sheeran song, and we'll be there singing along, some of us out of key or out of time, still driving down these country roads.
So many great adventures with so many friends. We treated each one as if it was our last. In the end, thanks to Sarah's endurance, we had many last holidays. We had the last holiday to Finland to ski and see the Northern Lights in 2012. Another last holiday in 2015 in a converted army truck from Cape Town to Victoria Falls via the deserts of Namibia and the beautiful Okavango Delta in Botswana. Unfortunately, our last planned big holiday was going to be to Malaysia, Borneo and Australia in 2020, but the pandemic put paid to that. Our final holiday was like our first with me, spent in Ireland. We had a very special time. We revisited old Iron Age sites and the glorious white sand beaches of Donegal that we had visited with Mark and Sarah Evans more than 30 years earlier, and all to the sound of cuckoos. We're now going to hear the song Moon River, a song much loved by Sarah. I suspect, because like many other women, she fancied herself as Audrey Hepburn in breakfast activities. After that, Fintan will read a short piece Sarah wrote about bluebells.
And the words of Moon River are in the back. There's no excuses.
So,
Don't knock over anything, no?
It's all right. As soon as he's gone to sleep. He'll wake up and he'll come back.
Why am I'm crossing you in style someday. Oh, dream maker, you are radio. Wherever you're going, I'm going your way. Two drifters off to see the world. There's such a lot of world to see. We're after the same rainbow's end. Without them, my very friend, Moon River. Oh, dream maker, you heartbreaker, wherever you're going, I'm going your way. To drifters off to see the world, there's such a lot of world to see. We're the same rainbow's end, waiting round the bend. My huckleberry friend, Moon River, and me.
Is it just us? We get excited about bluebells the way the Japanese get excited about cherry blossoms. But the bluebell season lasts a lot longer than the cherry blossom season. We wait for them. We have woods that we know will have wonderful displays. The blue, the faint scent when you're in the middle of them. There's a zigzag path up a steep slope in Monkley Woods that takes you up through a lake of bluebells. It was the last place I went before I got ill last year. My friend Katie took me. We were laughing about it the other day. She was worried she'd have to carry me home. I tower over her, probably twice her weight. There are bluebells on the grass banks along the lane here. I took my mum there last year because she can't walk so well now, and she wanted to see the bluebells. Brownsham Wood has bluebells in a moment when you come out on the cliff top and see the sea. Our favourite bluebell spot is the wood up the lane. My son, Finton, discovered them. A neighbour runs his bullocks through the woods, so the undergrowth is kept nibbled back. It's like walking through parkland. You drop down through a field, an old abandoned orchard, and there you are. A sea, a river, a lake of bluebells, an inverted sky. It's the colour, the scent, and the sheer abundance. Abundance like a murmuration of starlings, an orchard full of blossom. Abundance is joyful, thrilling, and we don't often see it. I can remember, as a child, collecting armfuls of bluebells. My arms were smaller then, and picking wildflowers was allowed. We went up the avenue, past the waste ground, past the centre, and found a wilder landscape. There was a wood there, and yes, an abundance of bluebells. They fade so quickly once picked. The colour darkens and goes bitter, and the scent disappears. You should never pick them. You can't photograph a bluebell wood either. I've seen paintings that evoke them. My grandparents had one, a reproduction, and friends in Bristol's had the same painting. It's not great art, but it was obviously loved enough to be reproduced and to find its way into people's homes. Paintings can capture the overwhelmingness, but photographs don't seem to. Nothing ever catches the scent. It's sweet, but subtle. It envelops and embraces. You just have to inhale gently and accept.
Before I finish, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to come here and honour Sarah's life. I'd particularly like to thank Claire Malthus, Judy Brough, and Lou Rampling, who gave her great and witty support in our final year. They weren't the only ones. There are numerous people who offered and gave us support, too numerous to mention. So thank you. We know who you are. By preparing the speech, we looked through thousands of photos of Sarah, and in almost all, she was smiling and laughing. She had a wonderful, hearty, infectious laugh, as Julian told us, and it lightened all our lives. Sarah loved and was loved by so many people, and she deserved all of their love. She was intelligent, courageous beyond belief, trustworthy, kind, compassionate, humorous, but most of all, she was wise and used her wisdom to great effect. She was as constant as the northern star, and you could trust Sarah with your life and knew you were in safe and loving hands. I trusted her with mine and was rewarded beyond my wildest dreams. I would like you all to remember a life that was wonderfully and beautifully lived. I will now recite the poem I recited on our wedding day, the Song of Wandering Aengus, and then we will hear one of our favourite songs, America, by Simon and Garfunkel. This is slightly ironic. It's a slightly ironic choice, given that neither of us ever made it to America. But I think it was the sense of travel it evokes that she really enjoyed. But first of all, the Song of Wandering Aengus. I went out to a hazelwood because a fire was in my head, and cut and peeled a hazel wand and hooped a berry to a thread. And when white moths were on the wing and moth-like stars were flickering out, I dropped the berry in the stream and caught a little silver trout. When I had laid it on the floor, I went to blow the fire aflame, but something rustled on the floor, and someone called me by my name. It had become a glimmering girl with apple blossom in her hair, who called my name and ran and faded through the brightening air. Though I am old with wandering through hollow lands and hilly lands, I will find out where she is gone, and kiss her lips and hold her hands, and walk among long dappled grass, and pluck, till time and times are done, the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun. Farewell, Sarah.
We're going to do the song, as I said, the song America. We didn't put the lyrics down because it's quite a challenging one to sing. But if you want to join in. If you want to. Yeah, so okay. After that, there will be the tune "Sleep Navon," performed by our excellent musicians, and Sarah's coffin will actually be taken away. Okay. Now we want to make sure that the family will join her to say goodbye outside. One thing I should note that Sarah did ask and explain that she didn't want people at the cremation. So just so most of you probably know that. So this is a chance for people to say goodbye to her. And I know everyone in this room will probably want to go out there and say goodbye to her, but let's make sure we allow the family the space to do that. Yeah. So family and friends, the close friends, and that's why you're all in the front rows. That's why you got that position. Okay. So it's America, and then forward, and then we'll let the undertakers do their job and have the music. Okay. So you got one song to wait for.
Like dusty lovers reminding of vultures together. I've got some real estate here in my van, so bright like a cigarette, and this is when the lights, and walked on to look for America. Kathy, I said as we boarded the Greyhound Express, this sugar seems like a dream to me now. It took me 4 days to hitchhike from Saginaw. I've come to look for America. Laughing on the bus, playing games with the faces. She said the man in the gabardine suit was a spy. I said, be careful, this bow tie is really a camera. Tossing a cigarette, I think that's one in my raincoat. We smoked the last one an hour ago. So I looked at the scenery. She read her magazine, and the moon rose over an open field. I'm lost, I said, oh, I knew she was sleeping. I'm empty and waking, and I don't know why. Counting the cars on the blue Jersey Turnpike, they all come to the forest. All come to the forest. All come to the forest.
Well done.
Come out, please do. Just come to the side.
Very good.
Go and tell her she's worth your poor and if she denies you, and she won't. Where the next morning this young man arose, dressed himself up in fine suit of clothes, watch in his pocket and a cane in his hand, saluting the ladies he waved his smile. He went be set on me. Pardon me, lady, for making so free. Only find another lady, you have me heart. And if you deny me, I'm surely be off, little drummer, for what do you mean? For I'm the Lord's daughter of Ballygastine, for I'm the Lord's daughter that's honoured to sing. Be off, little drummer, you're making to ring. So he took off his hat when he bade her farewell. Then the soul down the head of our hell, for witness or pistol the hangs by the soul. Oh, I'll put an end to me own very life. But little drummer, now don't bear an ill, for I do not wish to be guilty of sin, to be guilty of innocent blood for the spill. Come back, little drummer, I'm here at your will. And we'll hire a car and to Manchester we go, and there we be married in spite of our foe. But what can I say when it's over?